It all started on that holiday in Spain. The pilgrims.
Pilgrims?
Hey.
Need a lift, mate?
No, I'm in training.
Training?
Yeah, I'm going to walk the Camino de Santiago. It's an 800-kilometre pilgrims walk in Spain.
I am hoping that after this Camino, I won't have to apologise for you anymore.
Bill, it's great to chat with you again. I was a teenager and you were doing a story for MIKE WILLESEE, I think, at our local church. You were very encouraging and kind and polite.
Boy, have I changed.
Look, to put this film into a broader context, it's only a part of your life's mission at the moment, isn't it? When you've done 5 Caminos and a book and this new movie, tell us about the walk that you want to do from your front door at Mudgee.
Originally, when pilgrims wanted to walk to Santiago to visit the supposed relics of St. James in the cathedral, what they did is they just walked out their front door wherever they lived in Europe. And so what you've got with Europe is you've got all these myriad of trails that sort of lead then to maybe half a dozen singular paths that take you then to Santiago. And so what I have wanted to do is to basically replicate that, to walk out my front door. My wife and I live in Mudgee in central New South Wales, which is about 300 kilometres away from Sydney Airport. I want to walk from Mudgee across the Blue Mountains, 300k to Sydney Airport, catch a plane. I'll catch a plane to Madrid, walk from Madrid then what's called the Madrid Camino up to meet up with the Camino Frances, then walk to Santiago and then walk to Cape Finisterre. So my plan has been to walk from my front door to the end of the world.
That is amazing. That's just phenomenal.
It's more than 2,000k, but it's been complicated by the fact that I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And this diagnosis was 6 years ago. It has severely limited my ability to walk. So whereas before I was anticipating an average of 25 kilometres a day, I've had to reduce that somewhat to about 15k a day. But I want to make the walk, I want to dedicate the walk for Parkinson's awareness.
That's an extraordinary thing to do, mate. And it comes back to the various reasons that people would embark on such a trip as a Camino in the first place. The sense that you get when you're watching the film is that the Epiphany is there waiting for you and you're going to get it if you take this trip. But that's not really the case, is it? And in fact, it wasn't even the case with you when you did your first one.
Well, no, let me pull you up on a couple of things there, Ian.
Go for it.
Any film is a fiction. The mere fact that you place a camera in front of somebody brings an element of artifice to that person's response. When you bring in other things like lights and microphones and things like that, immediately you create a fiction. Now, you might say, well, no, I'm just capturing reality. You're not, because whenever you bring a camera and camera equipment and the process of filming to anything, whether it's a real moment or not, it is still a fiction. And then you bring in the element of editing and selective editing. Editing by its mere nature is selective editing. You choose which moments you're going to keep, which moments you're going to discard. That in itself is a fiction. So there's no such thing as saying that film is, there are certain types of film that are non-fiction, certain types of films that are fiction. All film is a fiction. Now, this is a fiction, of course it is, but I have gone to enormous lengths in the making of this film to make it as accurate and as authentic as possible. And one of the things that is so very hard to do is to take the artifice out of filmmaking and bring it back to an authenticity, which is what I've tried to do with this film. It has elements of documentary style to it, but it's still a drama. When you bring music into a film, it's a fiction. When you bring sound effects into a film, it's a fiction. Now, coming back to your second point about Epiphany, yeah, I didn't know why I was walking this Camino.
I don't know why I'm doing this walk. I want to let the walk give me the answer.
Hope you find what you're looking for somewhere along the way.
And I was hoping that in the walk that I would have an epiphany where the reasons would become apparent. I walked 800 kilometers with a bung knee in enormous pain. I got to Santiago expecting this epiphany. I was expecting doves, white doves, to flutter down from the heavens, you know, with little canisters, brass canisters tied to their little tiny feet. And I'd open up one of these canisters and out would pop a message saying, "Bill, this is the reason why you walked the Camino." I got to the front of the cathedral, you know, which is kind of like the end of the Camino, and it was a nothing burger. It was underwhelming. And the epiphany never came. So what happened was that I went back home to Australia and I wrote a book. And I was hoping that in the writing of the book, that epiphany would come, that I would find closure. And in a sense, writing the book, I hoped would be the completion of my walk. And in a sense, it was. But really, that epiphany never came. I should say, no. The epiphany has only come just recently, now somewhat 11 years after doing the walk. And that epiphany is, and this may sound a bit odd, that I strangely did the walk to make the film, even though I had no intentions of making a film when I did the walk, and even when I wrote the book, I had no intentions of making a film. But now when I look back on it and I see it in its totality and I see it with some perspective, the only thing that makes sense to me is that I did the walk to make the film. Because really the walk was nothing special. People do that walk every day. You know, dozens and dozens of people walk 800 kilometers or more every day and arrive in Santiago.
Oh, crikey, here's that old fella. We haven't even started the climb and he's knackered.
Oh, you going okay?
Oh, hello again. Everything's fine. I'm just taking in this magnificent scenery. Look at it. It's wonderful.
Ah, you sure you're going okay?
Brand new. Everything's fine.
That's good. I'd like to stop and chat, but I've got to crack on, you know. Got to keep going at my own pace. I'll see you at the top. I'll buy you a beer.
Oh, I should really hang back and walk with him. Make sure he gets to the top without carking it. Ah, he'll be fine.
So what I did was nothing special. The only thing that was special was that I documented it in a way that seems to have resonated with people. And, you know, that's only because I'm a storyteller. There you go, fiction. Everyone walks their own Camino.
Hi there. Can't stop. Need to walk at my own pace. I'll see you at the top. I'll buy you a beer.
And I was thinking about it, you know, it's 800 kilometers and literally millions of people have walked this same path. But I would suggest that no one person in all of the millions of people that have walked the Camino over the centuries, no one person has walked the same Camino. In other words, every single footfall is different.
Somewhere along the way.
And if you think about it that way, just in purely physical terms, they might walk the same trail, but every single footfall is different.
Somewhere along the way.
Somebody starts off at St. John Peter Paul, they get to Santiago. They might walk the same trail, but every single footfall is different. They say that everyone who walks the Camino walks with a question that they need answered, and they may not even realize that they have a question. I didn't realize that I had a question when I walked the Camino, but they say that everyone who walks the Camino has a question, and the Camino will answer that question, not necessarily on the walk itself. Sometimes it takes, you know, weeks later, months later, sometimes years later, but that question will be answered.
I imagine it could be a very lonely experience, which is probably partly the reason that the pilgrims you meet along the way have an extra added significance, and perhaps you form deeper friendships because you're essentially alone and you're walking a very lonely trail.
I think the reason the friendships are formed and the reason the bonds are formed are because you are sharing you're sharing an experience that is really quite intense. And there is a camaraderie that develops because of that. So it's less about lonely people finding solace in companionship. It's more about people undergoing a shared intense experience and bonds forming because of that.
Hey, Bill. Yeah, I'm Balazs. Nice to meet you. Here comes Leslie. Yeah. Hi. Oh, no, don't hug.
I'm Rosa. Home for the night?
Did I have a turn-down service? That's a joke.
Do you sleep well?
No, there was someone snoring. Farting.
That's disgusting.
Ce n'est pas la bonne route.
Ah, bonjour, madame. Bonjour, monsieur.
Yes, there's focus. Yes, there's occasional camaraderie, and there's lots of personal thinking and an awful lot of stuff that goes into the whole experience. But the one unifying thing is damn pain.
I think everybody has their own different pain. I mean, there can be physical pain like blisters or shin splints or, you know, just in my case, a bad knee, heavy backpack, you know, but there's also emotional pain. People come to the Camino with enormous emotional pain, some of them, and they keep it well hidden. You know, you ask people why you're walking Camino, very few people tell you the real answer. And very few people, in fact, really know themselves. It might be pain of a separation or the loss of a loved one. It might be pain of involved in confusion because they've lost their job or, you know, their marriage is broken up. It could be something as simple as a pet dying. Physical pain you can overcome. You know, you can get antiseptics, you can get painkillers, you can get betadine. Betadine's fantastic for blisters. You know, things like that. You know, you can overcome pain, and physical pain comes and goes, oftentimes. But emotional pain, deep emotional pain, that lingers. That's tough.
One of the greater relationships, which is a part of the film, is the relationship between Bill, the walker, and his wife. And it's almost a love story between those two people, but one of them we only see fleetingly in passing. But it is a love story, isn't it?
I think you've nailed it there, Ian. I think the film ultimately is a love story. It's about a woman who wants her husband to change. They've been married a long time and he's become very fixed in his views. And she wants him to change, to become more flexible. And during the process of the walk, that in fact is what happens. So I think it is a love story as well, yeah.
What are you doing?
I'm just weighing my stuff.
You're weighing your underpants on my kitchen scales.
This is Jennifer, my wife. We've been married 41 years, and she still manages to scare the living daylights out of me. Well, they're clean. Look, I've got to weigh all this stuff. I've got to get it down to 7.8 kilograms.
Why?
Because that's 10% of my body weight. I weigh 78 kilograms, and that's the ideal weight, 10% for your pack. But I need all of this, and this weighs 12.4 kilograms.
So 12 kilograms.
No, 12.4 kilos to be exact.
Well, let's just round it down to 12, shall we?
Okay, then.
And you want to take all of this?
Yep, that's it.
And the ideal weight for your backpack is 10% of your body weight.
10%, that's right.
Okay, then it's simple.
It is?
Of course. Just eat more. Get your body weight up to 120 kilograms, and then you can take everything. You've got 6 days. You can do it.
Did I mention that my wife delights in mocking me?
The lead character is clearly a version of yourself, but it's not you. It's as though you've stood back and you've put him under a microscope and you're distancing yourself from him. There's so much of you in that character. What did you learn from observing yourself at this distance?
The only way that I was able to make the film was to regard myself in the third person, regard myself as this separate character that was quite interesting because he was so flawed. And deeply flawed at times, and humorously so, because he had no idea that he was just such a pain.
So you want to walk another 427 kilometers on a knee that would put most people in hospital, just to give a man you met 2 or 3 times a towel that cost him what, 60 euro? 70 euro? That's ridiculous.
Oh, he was very generous and very kind to me, and I need to return that generosity.
By returning a towel that he's probably forgotten about? This has nothing to do with a towel. This is about ego. You want to show him that you're not old and past it. You want to show yourself too. This is about ego. Male ego.
I need something to see me through this. Otherwise, I could easily give up.
Finally, honesty. Good. But I still think there's some male ego in there.
Maybe.
If you're going to tell the story, you've got to tell it truthfully, and really warts and all, which is what I did. In any transformational story, you've got to have somebody starting at a certain point and ending at another point. And so it was important in the storytelling, and it's not inaccurate as well. The Bill starts off, quite arrogant and up himself, as his wife talks about later, and has very firm views that he won't budge on. And that's necessary, because you need to see that character go through the changes that he's going to go through. Do I like the character? If I was sitting opposite Bill at a table on day 1 of the Camino, I'd find some reason to leave that table.
And at the end of the journey, have you come to become more sympathetic?
Yeah, at the end of the journey, you think this is somebody I wouldn't mind hanging out with and maybe picking his brains, on something. Yeah.
That is bone on bone. You will not be able to continue your Camino.
We'll see about that. That's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Water. I need water. I see this walk as an 800-kilometer-long cathedral. This is the Camino. Miracles happen all the time.
Look, I was staggered to read that most of the characters in the film are portrayed by real pilgrims that you met and bonded with during your own experience. You're dealing with essentially non-actors. How do you get them to create these moments again? Because number one, you can't recreate something you've already done. You have to create it again from scratch. If you try to mimic what you've done for the camera, it will come across as so false. So you've got to get non-actors to create what they've done before from scratch. Now, how the hell do you do that?
That's a really, really good question. And you've really put your finger on it, Ian, because it's enormously difficult to do that. Of the 22 speaking parts in the film, only 4 are professional actors, all the rest are pilgrims. And the pilgrims that I interacted with in the film are those exact same pilgrims that I walked with 11 years ago. They came back to play themselves. And what happened in the intervening 11 years is that I maintained a friendship with them. And this comes back to this shared experience and the intensity of the friendships that result as a consequence of that. And I remained friends. My wife, Jennifer, and I traveled to Hungary and hung out with Laszlo and Balázs, 2 of the featured pilgrims. We went to northern Italy and hung out with Iban and Giovanna, another 2 of the featured pilgrims. The lady, French waitress Marie, who takes the photo and doesn't get the headroom right, she became a very good friend. So when I called them up out of the blue and said, hey, I'm going to make a film, do you want to be in it? It wasn't a stranger calling up, from 10 years in the past. It was somebody who was a friend. Now, that aside, to get those performances to be as real and truthful and as authentic as they are is a very, very subtle process. And it starts from the very first phone call with them when you call them up. The trick to it is that you have to take away the obligation to please me. So my job as the director was to create an environment where the filmic process disappeared. Like, for instance, we didn't put slates on the head of takes. We end slated. We didn't have big boom mic. We radio mic'd. I never gave any of the actuals, I call them actuals, scripts. They never saw call sheets. They never saw production reports, things like that. We instructed all of the crew not to use film speak around them. So there was a very deliberate and carefully thought through process that Jennifer and I went through to take the filmic nature out of the experience, if that makes sense.
Indeed.
These are actual pilgrims, they're real people. At any time, they could have, you know, knocked on my door and said, Bill, this is boring. I'm sick of this. I'm going home. You know, and you'd be halfway through a shoot and suddenly one of your main characters has just disappeared and you've got no recall, you know, because they're not an actor. You know, they were getting paid what we called stipends, which was an amount of money to, you know, cover them. But there was they weren't contracted under actor awards or anything like that. They were paid and paid properly. But once again, it was this whole process of eliminating the filmic nature out of it. But, you know, the only reason they hung around was because they wanted to. I mean, it was pretty scary, really.
Indeed.
The whole thing was scary, Ian. I mean, it was a huge risk for me as a director to undertake this. I didn't know whether it would work or not. But having said that, I've now done, I think, 4 films which have been totally improvised. My very first film, A Street to Die in 1985, I worked with some non-actors, some actuals. I did that with Backlash, my second film. I've done it with a number of films since. And so I have developed a means and a technique of working with non-actors where I've been able to deliver really truthful, naturalistic performances.
When you embark on this front door book, which is massive, is there something that you want to devote that thinking time to?
Well, once again, Ian, that's a very good question, and you're a very interesting interviewer. Let me put it that way. Death, really, because I could die on this walk. I could die. You know, Michael Mosley, a week ago, was still alive. And he went for a walk and he died. He was 67 years old.
To some sad news now, because the body of UK TV presenter Michael Mosley has been found on a Greek island.
His wife, Dr. Claire Bailey, confirming that it was his body. She said she is devastated to have lost her wonderful, funny, kind and brilliant husband. He has 4 children. They all travelled to the island of Simi to try and find him. But unfortunately, this story has come to a tragic ending.
No one thought that would happen, you know. These sort of, you know, I'm getting to the pointy end of my life. And, you know, I'm 6 years into Parkinson's disease. Anything could happen, you know. So I want to give some thought to the finality of things.
I've never admitted to anyone before, but I've constantly found it impossible to open one of these cartons of milk properly. Try as I might over the years, the perfect way has eluded me.
You had an illustrious career at a very young age in current affairs.
Welcome to A Current Affair.
What did you take away from working with Mike Willisee?
Well, I had and do have still enormous respect for Mike. He was one of the great journalists of his era worldwide. But I got very disillusioned with television current affairs, both in the ABC, because I spent about 10 years in the ABC, and commercially. We talked about artifice before. I realized that certainly television number one, news is subjective. I had this big kind of argument with, what was his name? Duck Manton, who was general manager of the ABC at the time, I think. Talbot Duck Manton. Yeah. And I tried to tell him that ABC News was subjective, that it wasn't objective at all. We had this argument, and I was too young then to fully articulate what I felt. I'm able now, probably with some years of wisdom, to be able to fully articulate it. But news is subjective. It's not objective. So once again, it's false. Television current affairs, whether it's the ABC or whether it's commercial, is infotainment. So let's call it what it is, guys. If you're going to make infotainment, call it fucking infotainment. And I had to get out because I realized that I was working in a lie. I was perpetuating lies each night that I was on TV. And, I won a Logie for Television Reporter of the Year. I ended up winning a Logie for Most Outstanding Documentary. You're right. I could have gone a long way in television, and I could have had a much healthier superannuation fund than I've got right now. But I couldn't work in an environment which wasn't truthful, which didn't own up to what it truly was. It was pretending to be something that it wasn't. And that's why I bailed out of it and went then into making documentaries for a big country, the ABC show, and then ultimately then into making my own feature films. What catapulted me out of it, Ian, was this. And that is that as a journalist, you are instructed to always see the bad side of people. There's no news angle in seeing the good side of people. People are complex. People do things for different reasons. But television current affairs wanted it to be black and white because that's what is immediately accessible to a television audience that has a very, very low attention span. I just, I had to bail out of it for that reason. I couldn't cop that anymore.
Well, it seems all my problems are solved now that I know how to do it. I'll just go through it, see how it's done. You open it up here, and now you pull the folds back. That's what I wasn't doing before. I was putting my finger in, and you press the spout up. I'm having a bit of trouble with this one. You press the spout up like that, and
we're going to lose the feed in 6 seconds. Mate, you've been generous with your time, and I really appreciate the content, mate. Thank you. And I love the film. It was just brilliant. Yeah.
Thanks, Ian. Thank you. Thank you. I've enjoyed this.
Great. Thank you very much, Bill.